Good morning, my name's Lorene. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. Today we're going to be talking about The Grace Year, written by Kim Liggett, published by Wednesday Books in 2019. And I believe that Wednesday Books is one of the subsidiaries, I guess, of Macmillan Press. This is a YA book, and it was read for my book club at Woozles. We had a Zoom meeting. I think there was about 20 some participants. Yeah, I think that's right. And so it's pretty interesting because this book club tends to not have very much in the way of process. We just talk over top of each other, and who's ever the loudest or the longest tends to get their voices heard, and those who are quieter and more introverted are struggle to get heard. Although we recognize that about ourselves, so we do behave eventually. But because this was on Zoom, and Zoom highlights the little a square goes around the picture of somebody, whoever's speaking. So there's all these flashing yellows and half yellows and quarter yellows. And so it was really, it was confusing to figure out who was actually speaking and who was giggling. So it was a very interesting book club. I enjoyed it, but I do much prefer to see people in person, of course. Who doesn't? We talked about the Grace Year in the way we usually do, which is to take the plot and kind of pull it apart. What is, once a large piece of pork becomes pulled pork. It is just shredded to pieces. And this book was considered somewhat in contrast to The Wilder Girls that I reviewed earlier, mostly because there are some similarities in that there are isolated groups of girls and how they are approaching significant ethical decisions. So I guess that's what the similarities are about it. So we had a lot of problems with the plot. I think we all really enjoyed the main character, and yeah, of course, I forgot who the main character is. Oh my goodness. Tyranny. Tyranny is 16 years old, and in her culture, the girls at 16, whoever is 16 for that year, will have to go out for a year outside of the community, and they go to this encampment that's isolated, and there are walls around it, and there are people, men who are hunters outside of the walls, and so the girls, should they try to escape, are killed. And there's many ways for the girls to die along the way. None of them nice. Well, they're in the wilderness, there are crazy animals, and there's just not knowing how to survive in the wilderness. So there's many ways for the girls to have to really struggle. They don't really have enough food. Water is, it's weird. The water is really weird in terms of the taste, and it's coming from a well, but it seems to be a contaminated well, but that's the only obvious source of water. Let's see, the girls have to try and figure out leadership and make group decisions. And so what's interesting for this particular group of girls is that there's, of course, the one girl who's just, she's like the head chick, I guess. And so she's got all these friends, just like in those Valley Girl stories where she says something and they all rush to obey. So there's this leadership. I don't think Tyranny even really wants the leadership. It's just that the leadership of the other girl is completely disregarding any kind of survival tactics. Okay, so I should back up a little bit, because one of the reasons the girls are isolated at the age of 16 is that the society has determined that is when the girls come into their magic. And the magic that they have is detrimental to the men in the society. So somehow by going on this year, they purge their magic and come back cleansed, as it were. And so one of the things the girls have an expectation of is that they will encounter whatever their kind of magic is, and whether it's speaking to birds or being able to make plant grow, or maybe be able to anticipate the wind coming, and so, or maybe even control weather. I mean, it's really unclear to the girls what kind of magic they'll be encountering. It's all a supposition. We don't really encounter any real demonstrations of magic along the way. So it's somewhat sort of a hysteria around this. The girls have been told all their lives the magic's going to happen. And as the year goes by, it doesn't really take place. So when the girls in previous generations have gone out on these excursions and returned, their magic is purged. But again, we never actually see any manifestations of magic. So I don't know, it's just sort of a weird, it's kind of a weird nothingness in a way. So while the girls are on this excursion in this particular year, they are trying to figure out ways to survive, and the what is the name of the anti-hero? Oh my goodness. Yep. Should have written that down. Okay, so they are at odds with each other because Tyranny is doing things like creating a well, fixing a well so the water can be brought up, helping to figure out some gardens, and the oppositional group is just wrecking everything. I guess they don't see that survival is of the first order. It's more purging themselves of the magic that's at the first order. So as the winter and the fall and the spring, it all takes over a course of a year. As the months pass, their survival ability just becomes less and less, and they are on rations, and all kinds of actual toxicity is taking place in their bodies, and they're being poisoned and experiencing hallucinations. So there's a lot of very interesting plot points in the story, but because there are so many plot points, there are also as many plot gaps. And I found it really difficult to enjoy the book because of everything was a question. Why is this part of the story? Why is that part of the story? I found that the world building really was, there was a solid world building point, and then everything that surrounded it was just, why is that there, and why is that there, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so to me it was a book of questions, and Tyranny eventually figures out the answer to things. I have to be careful about spoilers because it is definitely an action-packed book. I was turning the pages the whole way through, but as I was turning them, I was thinking, oh, that doesn't make a lot of sense, or that, I wouldn't mind a better explanation for that, or why is this a priority? And so it was a book of why, in a way. And we come to the ending. Got to be very careful here about spoilers. And I found the ending to be, it's a bit of a cliffhanger. It's a bit vague as to what the resolution is. Certainly in the book club, there was divided opinions as to what the ending, what actually took place. And so if one group feels that because of the ending there's likely to be a sequel, and those of us who felt that it had ended a different way felt that the story was well and truly done and we didn't need to go back to it. So we'll see what happens. Well, let's see, I guess one of the thoughts that was brought to the discussion was that this is a book about feminism. My feminism is based in, back in the 60s and the 70s, and I've tried to update it from time to time. So I'm not entirely sure what this person meant by it being an argument for feminism, in the sense that these women are definitely oppressed in their societies, and they need to do something about that. They haven't. There seems to be some kind of a resistance, but I'm not entirely sure. We figured out in a way who they were, but what were they resisting against? I think it was mostly at this stage just the creation of the notion of resistance. So to me, it wasn't particularly a feminist tract. I didn't feel that the women were particularly empowered at any step of the book, recognizing that they certainly needed to be, So maybe it's not so much about what's happening in the book as what's happening to the reader. Maybe that's where the feminism lies, in that as a reader I'm feeling, you know, this is definitely an oppressive thing and that's an oppressive thing, and I should, you know, look out for that and the other thing in my own life. Now, I'm not sure whether a YA reader of, you know, somewhere between 16 and 19 reading this would be quite so alert to that. Because a lot of people in that age category haven't bumped into any kind of real male oppression. Yeah, no, that's a stupid statement. They have. Yeah, so it was a bit confusing as to what was the intent of the story, beyond its plot and its characters, whether there was an underlying theme. I didn't feel particularly hopeful at the end. I felt that it, because of the open-ended ending, that the hope was somewhat pulled away from the possibility of going forward. So I found it a bit of an unsatisfactory book in the end. I mean, although I did keep turning the pages. Let me see, Goodreads gave it a I think it was a 4.5 rating. And I did not. I gave it I'm pretty sure I gave it a 3. Yep, I gave it a 3. There was a lot of very interesting elements to this book, and certainly a lot of the fringe characters were interesting. There's a skeleton that plays a role. There's a guard that plays a role. There are some hunters that play a very significant role. Tierney's dad is significant. Her sisters, her older sisters, who've already experienced the grace year, play a role. So that was pretty nice. There was it wasn't just 2 or 3 characters that were all you saw. I felt that the surrounding characters definitely lend quite a bit to the story. So I guess it just didn't work for me. I do like science fiction. I do like magic. And I do like a society that is working on survival issues, but I don't know, I just didn't love it. Now, let me see, has she written other things? Blood and Salt, Heart of Ash, The Last Harvest, which won the Bram Stoker Award, and The Unfortunates. I'm going to give this author one more go, see, maybe her writing style is certainly good. She really draws a nice picture. She's not afraid of a gory story either. There are a couple of spots that were a little bit gory, but I just felt that the plot itself was more holes than not. I will give her another try and see what happens, and I'll let you know how that goes. I hope all your dreams and adventures reading books come true. Take care. Bye-bye.